Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Not that that matters to you because we are here in the eternal night, which is slush.
Yes.
Or morning, early morning.
Yes, I haven't gotten this much input in my brain in a long time from everywhere, all directions.
Yes. We are now about to interview someone called Lisa Välikangas, who is a professor of innovation management at a number of institutions, both Aalto and at Hanken, and she has just come back from judging one of the pitch competitions here at Slush, and we're a bit interested in asking her about pitches.
Yes.
As well as perhaps the kind of the relationship between academe and this world of entrepreneurship, right, which has, you know, there are really many relationships between these two worlds.
Certainly.
Well, the most obvious one, I think, is the fact that the whole place is built up by university students who have taken the initiative to start it.
Right.
And that's quite a kind of recurring theme that we start seeing. Many of today's kind of companies are built up.
She's also, if I'm not mistaken, relating to the academic topic, she's running a course on Hanken right now.
Yeah.
Called Strategic Growth Investing.
Yeah.
And she did this interesting thing. I think that we're going to hear more about the course from her. She knows better, but she invited her students here to do some field work, and that's interesting. I think we'll talk about that some more.
That sounds good. We've heard from some of those students previously.
Yeah, Rasmus Clark, for example, the big hockey player, man, with the beard.
Yeah, who we spoke to yesterday morning.
I don't know why I shook my head when I said that, but it was just his size just still boggles my mind. With those words.
With those words, could we now introduce Professor Lisa Välikangas? Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi.
Good to have you here.
Good to be here. Hi, Isak.
Hi.
Hi, Frederick.
Um,
How are you?
Very good, and how are you?
I'm good. I mean, I'm just getting more energized as this thing goes on.
So you've caught the bug too. So
I think I got the bug a long time ago. Remember, I used to live in Silicon Valley, where all this thing originated in a way for more than 15 years. And actually, I was just saying to the Accenture Accelerator that you may have mentioned, where I was in the jury, that what really excites me is that I think we're trying to do, or we're doing, Silicon Valley 2.0 here in Helsinki, and perhaps Finland more broadly. So that's
Silicon Valley 2.0.
Yeah, I think that's what we're after.
Do you mean that Finland is replicating the model of Silicon Valley, or is there a sort of a Finnish-Nordic twist here in this sort of 2.0?
Yeah, definitely not replicating. Right. I mean, that would be very stupid. It's impossible to imitate or replicate or copy something that kind of has organically developed and exists only in the Bay Area, and it is sort of local eccentricities, if we like. So what we need to do here is make something of our own, but develop it equally organically, and kind of say, well, we have lots of really cool people in here. We have this Slush thing that seems to be putting energy and kind of giving a branding on the entrepreneuring in Finland. Yeah. And I think the rest is history. It remains to be seen as to what we can evolve out of this with our way of thinking and with our way of being. So 2.0 means doing something on your own, but something different, but cool.
Is there a sense of this? Yesterday, Marianne Mikula, she launched the hashtag, which a lot of people forgot actually. This is a very, very short-lived, at least in our conversation, short-lived hashtag, Brag for Finland. But the mindset behind that, we had a discussion with Chris Dolvaska from Smartly, who also had a very interesting perspective on it. He said that it's not so much that Finland needs bragging, but Finland just needs more, I guess what he
humility, I think the term. Keep being humble. Keep being humble,
but I mean, what was his twist on the matter? Now, I should probably know what he said, because
I can't remember. Well, I think that he said that it's not a bad thing that we are such a humble kind of culture in the Nordics, I think, more generally than just Finland, but perhaps Finland is taking the part.
I don't know what he said, but it's probably, it's kind of charming to people, and we also make it a big joke that the Finnish people sort of apologize when they show up, or they say this will never be good enough or something. But of course, you also have to learn to show that you care about what you do and that you trust it, because if you don't, then nobody else
Absolutely.
bothers
This
to do
sort of
that.
realistic optimism towards what you do. Like there's this, I mean, I love these new Finnish, completely different off-topic pull-up reference to this conversation, but we have like these new Finnish athletes, Lauri Markkanen, Patrick Laine, whose attitudes are more, they're not they're not bragging about their own skills or abilities, but they're confident. They are. It's realistic optimism, as I said yesterday. I think don't be afraid to say that you're good if you're good. But the point is, I think Christo was exactly right when he said that humility is not a problem. It's not a problem being humble. I mean, quite the opposite. This sort of fake bragging is somehow even distasteful, I think, and it feels forced if it's done in that sort of way.
Yeah, there is this, if I may, kind of a Japanese saying which is called learned ignorance. And while it's not about humbleness, it sort of has the same feeling that you need to be very, very learned, and then you need to be ignorant in a sense that you know, because you know so much, how little you in the end know.
Right.
And I think it's the same thing with confidence, that you need to be confident but not complacent. And that's maybe one way of looking at it.
And humility is a way to learn. That is the mindset of learning.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, I think we have many topics to go through, very interesting topics. For example, you were, as we said in the introduction, you were one of the judges in the Accenture Accelerator Finals. One of the companies, actually Tero Lappalainen, who was here earlier, from Bankify.
From Bankify.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how was it?
It was great. I mean,
not necessarily his pitch in particular, but just
no, those sort of situations where you can, well, from a sort of judge's point of view, you have a privilege, an opportunity to see lots of people, teams present something they've been working on for quite a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the companies were rather kind of beyond the startup phase already. Others were just concepts that had been very quickly bootstrapped and prototyped. And it's sort of a privilege to sit there and listen to people tell you what great stuff they've been thinking and doing, and already what kind of validation they have and beyond. So it's really a pleasure to do that.
Yeah. Okay. You were also a judge of pitches. We were just distracted by
the director of the Hanken Business Lab joining us with this massive
a baby blue.
What do you call that?
It's a baby.
It's sugar something.
Cotton candy.
Marcus, can we get you into camera just very quickly? Welcome to Hanken Business Lab and its director. Candy floss.
We're really happy to have candy.
Cotton candy. Blue cotton candy.
Baby blue. I love that.
Baby blue, yeah.
Finland, go Finland.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll leave you having a good interview.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have cotton candy once in a while.
Just a little bit of cotton candy there, and we're back. We're back to pitching.
Yeah. You need to have some incentives, you know.
Yes,
Yes,
something.
yes. I mean, there's no better incentive than cotton candy.
Yeah.
Anyway, pitching.
Pitches, yeah. Pitches.
We talked about pitching with Tero Lappalainen, and I brought up this idea of the main idea of the pitch should be to deliver your business idea and stand out. I guess standing out is a big part of it. And I was watching pitches earlier yesterday for about an hour, and what I noticed was every single pitch, they had all been taught the same formula of pitching. And I'm sure they've been told that you're going to stand out by doing this. This is the formula through which you're going to convey the information, you're going to convey everything, you're going to convey your business idea, and you're going to stand out. But if everyone gets taught that same formula, who's going to stand out?
Yeah, well, this is called strategy commodification.
Right.
I mean,
What was
Good
it?
word.
strategy commodification.
Good
So
word.
when a strategy that once is victorious becomes copied by everybody, it
Right.
becomes a basic commodity.
A commodity.
And therefore you can no longer compete on that, and its value goes down, and it becomes price competition,
Right.
which in pitching case I'm not sure what that is, but
I
quite
see.
frankly, I mean, pitching is a good, efficient way of maybe communicating a lot, but I sort of think that it's a little bit here in the era of beyond pitching. I mean, pitching was sort of a big thing maybe in the last 5 years, but I think now we are moving into prototyping or showing validation or something. So while we probably still have pitches...
What does that mean, showing validation?
Well, like if you have a concept, maybe you bring the handful of customers that really love your service and you let them tell the story. Or you bring the prototype, you know, this is the thing we built, this works, push this button. Or you show something, and then around that you may tell something about why is this different from what the competitors are doing, or what is it that you can contribute to this as a team that's really unique.
Right. I love this because this is a very clear parallel. Now I remember, it's coming back to me what Christo said. This is exactly what he said. Maintain confident humility in your own work and let others do the marketing sort of for you, in a sense that validating your own project through their approval.
Yeah, Yeah.
Right, so you don't literally throw it, or figuratively kind of throw it down someone's throat.
Exactly.
Or push it down someone's throat.
Yeah. Because I think we kind of went from the I now dare to say that I'm great, and now it's become a little boring because everybody is saying that they are
Yeah.
great. So now you need somebody to actually testify that you are great.
Right.
So maybe we're
Which
moving
was
to that
always the
phase.
point, right?
Yeah.
And now we're finally there, it seems like, and that's good.
That's true. I mean, it is true that, I mean, it's actually interesting, I don't know if you know this, but we've been filming pitches here at Hanken for the entrepreneurship research group.
Okay.
And they want to test this kind of emotion sensors so that you can detect what kind of sensors people are using, you know. And we've been filming that, and I think that this kind of research into that is only possible because
Yeah, that sounds good.
You're running a course right now at Hanken called Strategic Growth Investing. I guess first of all, what is it?
So it's collaboration with Benjamin Mori, the finance prof, and it is a first pilot course to combine knowledge from finance with organization and strategy, maybe also a little bit from sort of entrepreneuring, because we think that maybe there is kind of a gap in business school teaching in terms of, yeah, we know a lot about startups and we know a lot about large companies and how you manage them, how you organize them.
Yes.
But we don't know much about grow-ups. I would like to call companies that go beyond startup phase into grow-up phase.
Sure.
And maybe then scale-up is after that. And so what is the required strategy thinking, what is the required organizing skills, or how do you value financially these kind of companies? And so we're trying to kind of own that area and develop and share some management practice that really addresses the grow-up companies that are already beyond the sort of, well, we've gotten started, now what? And what has been very exciting is we had some folks visit the course, for instance, Morten Mikos, who is very well known, and he was talking about exactly this, that we don't really understand how to manage exponential growth. I mean, not all startups turn into exponential growth, but when they do, then you have a big requirement of how do you manage that? How do you think about how many people you need to hire, what sort of processes you put in place, how do you keep up with the speed? And so his suggestion was that...
When do we order the soda machine to the office, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So the discussions they are having in Hacker One are things like, well, what will break next? And then we kind of address the most serious things so that the company doesn't break, even if, you know, little things kind of break here and there when you grow that fast.
Yeah, I think you have more insight on this than I do, but this is a very interesting direction that academia has gone in recent, I guess, years even, I don't know, but this sort of multidisciplinary, before the sort of specialization of knowledge has gone to almost absurd extremes where people from even the same sort of, if I dare to use taxonomical terms, like in the same sort of branch of science, say biology, you can have two scientists who know nothing of each other's research subjects. The same in business schools, and this sort of intersection, this combination of this multidisciplinary academic learning seems to be a pretty new trend that seems to be like a counterforce to this sort of uber specialization.
Do you think? Well, I'm not sure. I feel the complete opposite, that it's going in some sort of direction of specialization.
It is, but there are some forces, as we see here, counteracting this. Or
I think Lisa maybe is the exception that confirms the rule.
I mean, so. You know more about this than I do.
Yeah, I think you're both right in a way that, yes, I think in terms of sort of mainstream academia, we are getting more and more specialized within our, not just discipline, but within the theoretical framework or the school of thought within our discipline. And that is partly driven by the fact that to publish, you need to have this kind of a niche that it is this niche that you are having a contribution or discussion with. But at the same time, I think there is this sort of a frustration that we need to understand phenomena much better, like growth enterprises.
The good old big picture.
Yeah. And so what can we bring to bear to talk about how grow-up companies are managed? And so then, it's lovely to invite people from finance or accounting or entrepreneurship or strategy to talk about that. I mean, there has been, like Santa Fe Institute for Complexity is one of these pioneers in this, because they said that, well, we want to understand complexity. And complexity can be understood from sociology, from biology, from physics, from
population ecology.
Population, your favorite topic. I'm sure they have something to say about that. And so then they brought in all these folks and started talking, like, how do you address this? And I think we should do something similar.
Yeah. It was interesting to think about the kind of more established field of organization studies, or organization and management studies, and entrepreneurship. It seems to, you know, at least from an inside perspective of academic departments and faculties, it tends to be so that you have disciplinary boundaries between, for example, an entrepreneurship department and management and organization department. Simply, I suppose, because of the history of those kind of fields of study. I don't know exactly the reasons for that, but a first reflection is to say something about going mainstream. So entrepreneurship is, in a sense, for your term, commodification. It has become a standardized world. People are, at business school graduates, are no longer only dreaming of either becoming investment bankers or management consultancies, but in the past 10-15 years they're now also dreaming of something entrepreneurial along the way. So
breaking the mold has become mainstream. Uniqueness has become commodified, and that's sort of an example.
He's a philosopher.
Actually, he is studying philosophy at Helsinki University. But I suppose that a first question is to say, is entrepreneurship becoming mainstream?
Well, in a way, or in that sense, it certainly is. That, first of all, like you say, it's a career that a lot of people here are now going after, or living, or dreaming about. So that's certainly mainstream, and that's a big difference societally, in Finland particularly, compared to the 80s or 90s or something. It's also going mainstream in a sense that all universities around the world are busy hiring professors or academics in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And this is one of those fields, in addition to sustainability, where lots of positions are being opened. So that certainly is going mainstream. Whether there is a linkage between research on entrepreneurship and perhaps research on management or organization, that's less clear. I mean, it's obviously there are a lot of spillovers and there are conversations going across these boundaries. But there's something about the university structure or academic structure which says you are a professor of entrepreneurship, or you are a professor of what am I a professor of? Innovation management.
Innovation management.
I remember in a second, yeah.
That's what am I, professor?
You have the same professorship, you have the same chair at Aalto as you have at Hanken.
I do, yeah.
Okay, innovation
but
management.
But it's not a chair, it's just a position, right? So those kind of things enforce these boundaries a little bit, and it's not because we as people didn't want to talk, but it's just the way it's kind of organized. So it kind of brings these boundaries with it, because then you need to have your own students, your own PhD students, your own courses, rather than, okay, so should we organize strategic growth investing and have a professor from each field come and teach, which is the way we are trying to break this stuff.
If you allow me to be a bit pedestrian, so I suppose I heard recently another philosopher, Lawrence Hemming, he said that...
An actual philosopher.
Another. He said that one of the ways of thinking about interdisciplinarity is to say that you are rooted or anchored in a discipline, and reaching out to someone from another discipline who's equally rooted and anchored in that, from, for example, sociology to theology, is a way in which you can strengthen your own discipline that you're rooted in. The purpose is not to exist on the bridge in between, but to exist in that discipline which you're that you have a strong anchorage, that you're trained within. However, I think that a very dominant perception of interdisciplinarity, perhaps a bit of banal perception, is that it actually is the bridge that matters, not the original disciplines, because that would...
well, I mean, if you want to build an academic career today, you have to have a discipline that you are kind of rooted in. I mean, that's a reality.
Okay.
And then you sort of, that's why this person that you mentioned is probably saying that first you get rooted and then you reach out. That is very true. The only issue is that it takes a long time to get rooted in a discipline, probably 10 years or something.
Yes.
And it's just maybe too late to really develop a broader perspective. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know, but it seems that when we're to add complexity, of course, organization studies or management studies or entrepreneurship studies are not disciplines. They are fields that are ultimately already cross-disciplinary.
Yeah, you're right.
And it would seem that entrepreneurship is a kind of just part of work and management and organization studies, but from a different angle, that it would be, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think we will find our own way of sort of being rooted into some kind of community, and then we sort of hopefully cross out or reach out to other communities. But I think it's a very personal question, like how you do that. Actually.
Okay, yes, maybe we constructed a false binary here. I don't know, but
that's a good
also inherited.
That's interesting.
So this kind of, but if we do take seriously this the history of entrepreneurship, if we think about 100 years of entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur 100 years ago would have taken risks that most contemporary entrepreneurs here perhaps would not have been willing to take. The question of risk is really kind of compensated for by vast number of resources. We've discussed incubators and accelerators today, and the Swedish term couveuse and incubators kind of taking care of something that is not quite ready for real life, so to speak, outside of it.
Yeah.
And that's just one example out of several where it's a very protected and covered environment. The whole pitching is ultimately about getting finances for something that you don't know if it's going to float. And the question of risk, it seems to have been is compensated for. So what it means to be entrepreneur seems to have changed over a long period of time, and maybe even the last 15 years.
Some sort of structure around being an entrepreneur that originally was supposed to be this sort of mold-breaking. I don't know how to put this, but sort of entrepreneurship in its core seems to be this pursuit of individual pursuit, basically, of individual enterprise, but
self-actualization.
Perhaps self-actualization.
Is that what you were going to say? I don't know. I'm putting words in your mouth.
I'm trying to construct a sentence.
Well, I mean, that's a good comment, because maybe...
But you've been around for 15 years in Silicon Valley. You were for 15 years in Silicon Valley, and then you came here. So you've had some time to reflect on, I suppose, the impetus for what we see here. As you said, Silicon Valley 2.0. So now that it's so standardized, commodified, mainstream, is it as exciting as it was when you started getting excited about it?
Yeah, I don't know if I really was excited about entrepreneurship 15 years ago, because I went from Japan to Stanford, from Keio Business School to Stanford University, and it was sort of a postdoc thing. So then I was just trying to figure out what Stanford was about and what it was really to attend a great university, because that was really my introduction to a place that I had never seen the kind of intellectual discussion before. So I was with Jim March at the
famous
so-called ScanCore, which I was very surprised to find, because I come from Japan to Stanford and there's this group of Nordics suddenly there, so I was shocked. I'm like, what happened here? But then I sort of slowly got introduced to the larger Bay Area or Silicon Valley community, of course. But kind of looking at entrepreneurship over a long time. So, we can look back at people who founded this, the Rockefellers, or the people who founded the Rothschilds. They all, at some point, they have probably taken huge risks. Or people who migrated from Finland to US or to Sweden for that matter, or people who went cross-country to sort of find to work in a mine in Bodie, California, which is a gold mine, the biggest Californian town. In
Two sets of very steep mountain ranges.
Yeah, that's pretty high going, and you have some horse or something, or mule that you're trying to get there with. So, I mean, we probably can't even relate what it was like. Right. Of course, the people didn't know any difference, so I'm not sure.
It's not exactly pitching at Slush.
No, they're not
gold
exactly,
mining.
yeah. I mean, it might be Slush outside, but it's pretty comfortable
just slush.
in here.
Just
So,
honey, did you find any gold? No, just Slush.
Yeah,
just Slush.
but even then, I mean, the best way to get rich was not to dig gold, but sell the shovels, you know. So
Right,
people
for
who
the
were
gold
selling
diggers.
equipment
Yeah.
suddenly got rich. And if
Is
you,
that true?
Yeah, that
Wow.
was a much better
That-
business model. So maybe we are a little pampered, but it's still, you know, it's an emotional thing. So if you really, and entrepreneuring is very, very hard if you do it seriously. I mean, I have no question about that. And you put everything you have. It's a little tougher than academic work, even though academic work can be tough also, and some of us try and work hard. But it's so psychologically demanding, and you get your ups and downs, and there are moments when you perhaps just cry because nothing works. And imagine kind of like you put 5 years of your life into something and it just doesn't go anywhere, it crashes. And so I once wrote about something called innovation trauma. Because a lot of we studied with a colleague of mine, Sun Microsystems, and they had this very neat product called Sunray, which was sort of a you could take your little chip and turn a terminal computer into your PC anywhere.
Right.
But it never flew, and they worked on it for, I think it was 3 years, not having any vacation, nothing. And in the end, it was too late probably. Microsoft had come out and all that. And what the people manifested after this internal startup, which is really serious traumatic symptoms. I mean, it's like they had just lost 3 years of their life, and what they needed was therapy. You know, we went there with Jake Moldenhauer Salazar, who worked for Sun Microsystems, and interviewed people, and they said, "Oh, let me tell you." And then they started asking, "Was it our fault? What did we do wrong?" And we realized that they hadn't had this kind of a therapy session after the failure, and they really needed it.
Yeah.
And I think that's why entrepreneuring partly is hard, because you probably end up in this trauma situation, and then you somehow have to bootstrap yourself out of it.
And it's always generationally and culturally bound, the sort of emotional intensity of the hardship whenever you fail, as it were. Like our generation, me and Fred, I mean, we're so much softer than those California gold miners. So anyway, our startup fund, not getting any investor startup funding is going to be about as bad emotionally for us than someone losing a leg while
I
gold
feel
mining.
very tough.
We wish we were as tough as those people.
Maybe it's a different kind of toughness.
It's a different kind of toughness. Exactly.
Mental
This is the point, right?
yeah.
It's so hard to make these. I don't know if revisionist is the right word, but I mean it's so hard to make these comparisons because the experience is subjective.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe not physical hardship, but it can still be psychologically very
Exactly.
demanding.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, there was a documentary called Adam Curtis, and I think also what's his name, these London School of Economics governmentality people, Nicholas Rose, I think was one of them. We talk about the century of the self.
Yeah.
So the 20th century as Freud's, basically Freud's, maybe Marx as well, century, the most dominant voices in forming our thought. But it strikes me to go back a little bit to kind of our weekly hatchling metaphor of the couveuse or the incubator, or something like that.
Are they free range, by the way?
No, they're not, because they're in basements and even hospitals.
We have
Free range
organic
startups in this
organic.
incubator.
At least organic.
Organic
please,
startups.
Yeah.
But help me through this. If this is kind of a line of thought or not. So taking care of the kind of great efforts that are poured at caretaking of kind of a segment of our economy, entrepreneurs. Also a bustling industry around concepts such as well-being and wellness. which is now exploding to the point where it's deemed to be $3 to $4 billion industry. Granted, they're now including the whole, resorts and hotel and kind of tourism industry in that. But still, the concept is expanding to the point where that is where things are kind of understood along terms of caretaking and the need for that. And perhaps it seems to me that there is an emphasis, an increase in kind of an anxious orientation in our contemporary capitalism. Kind of Nigel Thrift called it soft capitalism, inspired term, soft. And I'm just wondering if is there some truth to that?
Well, there is a finding, or sort of a research finding from organization studies, which says that aspirations always adjust to accomplishments. So if you accomplish a lot, then your aspiration level goes even higher. Yeah. And so what is happening, I think, partially is that the more you have, your aspirations adjust, so the more you want, so to speak. And so maybe this is partly our own production, because there is this psychology in our minds that we always wish something more, even though we actually have reached.
Even if you were born into, let's say, wealth, and I don't know if this is, you can sort of superimpose this function on like a micro level of a family, sort of. Because my impression is that if you're born into a wealthy family, your drive to achieve more is not as high as someone who's born into, let's say, poverty. Am I right in this assumption?
I think it's a very personal question, because some people...
sociological, we look at like generalizations. I don't know if there's any
there's the famous book by, I think it's called the Buddenbrooks, which says that...
Buddenbrooks, the three generations.
You destroy the wealth, so maybe you're right.
Is that what happened?
I think this is what the book is.
And I'm the fourth one, so I have this pressure on me.
Are you a Buddenbrooks?
I don't know, but I mean,
he's not.
I mean, 4 generations ago, in my family, the wealth was acquired. It was abject poverty before that, basically. And I'm the 4th generation, so there's a lot of pressure on me to break the mold.
Okay. Well, that's one kind of pressure.
I don't know. Maybe that's even the point. I don't know. I want to be self-fulfilled, so I mean that's the point. I want to live fulfilled. I want to follow my passion.
Oh, he's a self-actualized. Yeah. Oh, are you into music, philosophy? Oh yes.
Yeah.
This is
that kind of stuff.
Read the book.
But who isn't like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Related question. The claim that everything, I mean, the kind of the very temporal orientation of entrepreneurship is also really quite present. So we this kind of claims that this is the latest or this is new. A very revealing example was from Silicon Valley, the satire. Have you ever seen it? That there is a kind of Mike Judge, who made Beavis and Butthead, has also made Silicon Valley, a TV series about it, satire.
It's really good. Recommend it.
But in there's kind of the most powerful, maybe the Google equivalent or something, that figure. He holds a speech and he says, hyperbolically, it seems to me, this where we are now, Silicon Valley, this place, this is Florence during the Renaissance.
Oh.
And this kind of, and you also hear that kind of the Renaissance term being kind of repeat. I'm a Renaissance man because you need to be. Entrepreneurship has imported the kind of the social psychological term, anthropological term, bricolage, and the kind of Levi-Strauss. Is it Levi-Strauss?
It is Levi-Strauss.
Okay. And so the kind of the reference to the Renaissance is significant.
Yeah.
So, but if we take that seriously, is there something to it? Is there something groundbreaking here?
Yeah.
The irony of calling something the new Renaissance.
Yeah. It's actually interesting because I used to laugh to myself. The guy who was the Cisco Systems Acquisitions Director was called Michelangelo Volpi. And I was always thinking, be going, okay, there's today's Michelangelo, you know, he's the acquisition manager for Cisco Systems.
That reminds me
when
of a
Cisco
philosophy.
Systems were still buying a lot of companies. Maybe there is something to that.
Reminds me of a philosophy professor at Helsinki University who's called Jan von Plato.
Okay.
That's pretty good. Oh, we had Rautio Kangas earlier today.
It's Victory Club,
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe. I think what we need today is more Renaissance, in a sense that the Renaissance people, at least the way we kind of use it metaphorically, was that they were people who had very broad interests, going back to this multidisciplinary or phenomenon-based discussion we have. That I think we could actually use a lot of that inspiration and be kind of broader in our interests or curiosities or studies or something. So it's very good to study philosophy and then engineering or anything, and of course arts and all that. And maybe what we can, and I think the emphasis on design today may actually be speaking to the fact that maybe arts and music, although we have a lot of music through all these iTunes and Spotify's, etc., but maybe they're a little missing in our life. Maybe we could use a little bit of more arts, more aesthetics, and I always feel like that it's very important that there's beauty around, because then you kind of get this lovely feeling in your head, like beauty, and just flowers or something, or anything.
Yeah, or even in architecture. Like there's been this recent, I mean, in Western Europe, especially in Finland, with this Finnish functionalism in the 60s was even somehow aesthetically pleasing in some senses, because there was still some sort of emphasis on, okay, let's make this functionalistically good looking.
Yeah.
These days they're just cardboard boxes with windows, essentially.
Yeah.
It's depressing. Why not put a little bit of effort into making the landscape around you, the space where you live in, look beautiful?
Yeah, I think it's very important for your kind of, at least for my mindset. Like for instance, this Messukeskus, whatever it is, this exposition hall, this is horrible. I mean, it's filled with great content, but the environment is not very...
But they made it look pretty cool. I gotta admit, they made it look
all
pretty
these
nice.
additions are good. And maybe that's why you have this structure, that it's very it's very versatile. But this place makes me kind of sad.
Even the way it is presented now.
Well, I mean, there are these very cool areas. Like I like the founder stage because of all the lights and all that. But there's something. I mean, have you been to the Pompidou Hall in Paris?
Pompidou Hall.
Pompidou
with the
building.
center.
Yeah, Pompidou Center, I guess.
Yeah.
So they have all the tubes and everything visible. And so it's a little similar, but in a Pompidou Center they kind of try and do something with the fact that all the structures are visible. And
This sort of kintsugi approach to like making the faults visible in a beautiful way, like coloring them. I mean, kintsugi, the Japanese sort of art of replenishing, not replenishing, but making broken bowls, ceramic bowls, whole again. Like you use golden laden glue just to make them better, and sort of emphasizing the errors and emphasizing the faults and emphasizing the ugliness, sort of making it beautiful.
So this is sort of functionalism without the functionalist aesthetic.
Right.
So I mean, it's a fine space, and I love the way it's set up and all that. But that's my point. That if Slush wasn't here, you know, then this would be.
This sort of like fugly nationalism. No, it doesn't work. No.
Anyway,
but there is
a hole here.
No, I don't think so. I think that I think this is actually a very good example. We've touched on this from a number of times, that they've been very particular with the aesthetic composition of this fair.
Yeah, well, the fair is beautiful.
To the point where you are only allowed a certain type of light here. They have a light code in here, so too much warm light is not allowed.
I see. Because it's Slush, so it has to be kind of right.
No, because they've thought about what the entire aesthetic experience will be like.
Okay.
And I think that actually is something to be said for, let's call it Silicon Valley 2.0 entrepreneurial culture, whatever you want to call it. There is a sensitivity to an aesthetic appreciation.
Absolutely, and this is so important. And you can, and it is, if that's true, that they put that much effort into it, to explicitly focus so much on the aesthetic aspect of this fair. It's fantastic, and that's the right approach.
Fantastic indeed. And so they've done amazing things with this space. So that's, we're definitely in agreement. And I'm very impressed that they think about those things.
If you travel around as I have outside of industrial parks in England, one of the critiques that you might be able to bring towards modernity or capitalist modernity is its ugliness. In addition to someone else said boredom,
Yeah.
bourgeoisie boredom. Buddenbrooks is probably an example of that. I think that maybe there is some hope in this kind of culture, that there is a kind of an aesthetic appreciation.
There is actually an architectural trend which is been around for some time. It's called Nouveau Brutalism.
Nouveau brutalism. Okay.
New brutalism. So for instance, the Bocconi University building that they built in Milan is this new brutalism, and it's kind of just cement and steel or something. So it's considered somehow appealing.
What is it called again? I'm going to Google this
Nouveau
right now.
brutalism.
Nouveau.
Brutalism.
I mean, Lisa, it's so nice to have you here. We could talk to you for ages, I'm sure. And,
Supposed to be 10 minutes.
This
How
was
long
supposed
has
to be
this
10
been?
And we
minutes.
got into Nouveau Brutalism already.
Yeah, and we're already kind of did a pit stop at Nouveau Brutalism. Where next? But before we'll continue, shall we just say thank you for now.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We had a really good time.
Great talking with you guys.
Really guys, talking to you.
High five.
Let's do a high five.